Welcome to Ask Us Marketing, otherwise known as A.U.M. I'm your host, Callie Fedesinko. I am the founder of Savvy Advisor Marketing, a digital marketing agency developed to build relationships between financial advisors and their target audience using data to create websites, online content, and ads. We build relationships first and we grow numbers second. You can learn more about me and Savvy Advisor Marketing using this QR code or by clicking on the show notes if you're listening via podcast. Our episode today is brought to you by the Financial Planning Association, which you probably know as the FPA. If you're not already watching on one of the FPA's channels, I encourage you to scan this QR code, learn more about them, and get plugged into a chapter near you. Excuse me. Now, before we jump into today's episode, this is all an illusion. I am not really here. I'm actually on maternity leave with this little guy who should be here in IRL, real life. This is a 3D printed ultrasound picture that my husband made me, and you put a light behind it and you can see it. So I'm out. And in my place is a great friend of the show, Derek Pollard of Constellar Creative. I've known Derek for a few years now, and he's awesome and truly one of the best, most authentic, encouraging people that I know. He will be interviewing today Drew Boyer, CFP, founder of Boyer Financial Group and creator of Sound Returns. Drew recently launched Sound Returns as a creative way to connect music and money. Interesting. He's helping people think about financial planning through stories and cultural moments they already relate to. So Derek will be exploring with Drew why relatable content is such a powerful marketing tool for financial advisors, from using storytelling to simplifying complex financial topics. They'll discuss how advisors can create content that resonates with real people instead of sounding like, every other financial message online. So with that, I will hand this over to Derek.
Cool. There we go. Well, listen, you just heard Callie's out on maternity leave. So if you're joining us live or watching the recording in the next couple of weeks, drop a note in the comments. I know she'd love to hear from you. Drew, it is an absolute pleasure to be able to sit down and talk with you. We were talking in the lead up to the show about how unique your approach is from a marketing perspective. And so I want to dive right in. Our time is somewhat short today. We could go on for hours. Not only are you producing Sound Returns, and I want to talk more about that, let people know what is going on there. You're also the author of the book Hip Hop and Finance, right? So many of you who are tuning in are like, dude, that's not what I do at all. Like, where is this even coming from? So there's the obvious question. What was the spark for this? Where did this come from? And why this particular connection between music and finance?
It might sound odd to everybody, but it was me tapping into my authenticity and ultimately what became personal ambition later on down the road. We were talking earlier, remember that commercial where there's a DJ the night before and he stays at a Holiday Inn and then the next day he's a financial advisor. My background is sometime around when I was in sixth grade, somebody gave this guy, a spastic little sixth grader, a couple drumsticks, and it just worked. I think everybody's got something that's unique about them that they can just do or have a natural inclination to be able to. And for me, it was drumming. And I did that all through grade school, high school, college. I was in some bands. I got to play in a rock opera, which was a blast. That's the only paying gig I got. So I did break even on everything I spent on my drum set. I actually made it all back. I don't know how many musicians can actually say that. So I got to spend a little time in New York and playing. But really, I had to grow up and get a real job at some point. And so after college was over, I was lucky enough during college to be able to do an internship that was at Merrill Lynch. And to date myself a little bit, I think it was way back in the late 1900s is when I got to get in and start working there. And as you know, the tech bubble burst and there was a burst of activity. And so they needed more people in the office to be able to create client pamphlets that were being sent out every week. I don't know if they let me around the phone calls at all, but I was helping them communicate. And I really, despite the chaos that was going in the market, I really enjoyed people calling in and being of service and being there to answer the questions. And so when I graduated college, I was able to get out into this and start my adventure. I apologize. It took 20 years for me to actually tap into my authenticity. It took almost 20. I got out and I was at a particular festival around a bunch of other creatives in this industry, Future Proof, if anybody out there had been there. And I just saw everything, the different ways that everybody was trying to stand out from the crowd. And I said, why have I never brought in drumming at all before, or music? And so that's really how I sparked the conversation. And when I got going and trying to bridge those two gaps together, writing the book, and then ultimately kind of going beyond just hip hop only and doing sound returns right now.
Okay. Well, a couple of things you said there really stand out to me from a marketing perspective. One, this is unique in financial services, right? And I'm not saying that a lot of advisors aren't cool. That's not the message here. But this is a really unique take. And I love the fact that before you realized what the connection would look like, right? This wasn't, hey, I'm going to put these two things together and I'm going to create a newsletter and I'm going to write a book. It was, how do I connect these things, right? What are the natural links? And then also, I know it may seem like a foregone conclusion once you've done it and had success, but there was a moment, I'm sure, where you're like, do I dare do this? Right? Is this going to fly? Or am I going to embarrass myself? Am I going to impact my business negatively by doing this? And so what were some of those thoughts for you and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, absolutely. And all that, when I was thinking about how to tie everything together, I'm a fan of all genres of music. And to me, being a young boy, one of the first things that was super impactful in my life was hip hop. And I remember visually when I went out and bought a record I wasn't supposed to, which wasn't a record, it was a cassette tape. I brought that home and it just ended up being like Sir Mix-a-Lot's Baby Got Back. And there's this great story in the book about how my mom popped it in the car and she heard, oh my God, Becky, look at her butt. And then by the time I got home, my dad smashed that. And so growing up in a conservative household, like hip hop imprinted me from a very young age about maybe do something against the culture, right? And go against the grain a little bit and question things. And so I carried that in. And that's how I ended up on hip hop. Is unfortunately, just like in real life, there's a lot of people, if you don't have the right people around you, and we're all young, we make mistakes when we're young. Eventually, hopefully you learn from those mistakes, but hip hop is littered by many, many bad decisions. Living in the moment, just look at the music videos. And when you find out behind the scenes, a lot of that stuff is rented. But going from like MC Hammer all the way up to like Jay-Z, hip hop, when it was young, just like us, made a lot of bad financial decisions. And by the time it got to around age 30, it started out to make better grown-up decisions. And now it's just been turned into this global phenomenon of marketing and money. And I think everybody's doing a pretty good job capitalizing it. But that was the road and how I try to go put it together. As far as music and money, being a drummer, like we were talking about, the beats and the math makes sense to me. And that's where I really wanted to start out with, and then ultimately hip hop. And then there's just so many stories within music of great decisions and not great decisions. And I'm just trying to highlight the difference between those and how you can put it into practice into your life.
And that's what Sound Returns is, right? Give us a little more detail. That's the overview. These things don't just manifest. There's a lot of work involved in this. What does that process look like, again, to help advisors just kind of start to think about drawing connections between their interests and experiences and how that might show up in their marketing? What are some of the behind the scenes things that you find yourself doing to produce this high level of content as consistently as you do?
Thanks. It helps being like I'm an unofficial, you're the professor, but I'm an unofficial musicologist. And so I just absorbed the stuff I always have, whether it's from trading cards and comic books to just music stories. And so I can go draw from that pretty easily for myself. But if you're out there and you're wondering what makes you unique, if you're into golf or anything else like this, go geek out on it. I just geeked out on music. I remember the stories of like Michael Jackson buying the Beatles, but it happened because Paul McCartney was bragging about buying up other musicians' rights and their publishing royalties. And then Michael goes and releases the #1 album of all time, takes his Thriller money, and then outbids Paul in his own music. It's classic. And then takes a bunch of loans against it. So I try to sit down and think about different genres of music. I try to theme them out to what's going on weekly as much as you can on a content calendar. If a well-known artist is releasing an album, what kind of story can I tell about that person? Or music festivals that I've been doing this summer. I try to tie it into an actual content calendar and think it through about what might be relevant for each week to week. And I do about a week out, about a month out total, with the right to change it up last minute. So that's my process in a nutshell.
That's fantastic. And again, what I love there is because you know yourself so well and you've committed to using your personal experience and your interests as the basis for your marketing, so much of this comes natural, right? You're just drawing on a lot of stories, and then the research follows that instead of having to go out, search for topics, right? Try to do keyword matching, make sure they're formatted for AEO, right? Do all of the ideal client profile research that goes into it. By dint of the fact that you are drawing on your own interests and experience, you're able to streamline that process. And also, I love the fact that because you have a finger on the pulse, you're aware of upcoming events, whether it's a concert, whether it's an album release. You're able to keep track of what's going on. You give yourself enough flexibility. I think this is one of the things that often gets overlooked in terms of a content calendar is, hey, we've got the next quarter plotted out. If there isn't room there to make those fine adjustments, if something comes up, if there's breaking news or something happens that you really want to key in on, you need to make sure that you have that flexibility built into your content calendar. So I love that as part of the process too. I also, just because of my own background, love the fact that really what we're talking about here is bringing a sort of punk DIY aesthetic and process into financial services. Now, everyone, again, don't worry, we're not telling you to go out and break everything, but there's a lot to be learned by that sense of not rushing and feeling as though you need to follow the next trend. Drew, one of the things that invariably is part of that process, whether it was punk, whether it was hip hop, right, is really giving yourself the opportunity to get to know who you are and developing that thick skin that you're going to need to take some of these chances, right? That's a really big deal. Like I said earlier, I know a lot of advisors feel either a sense of intimidation or even fear in being who they are out loud. So again, built in for you with your own experience, but are there a couple of things from that experience that you could point to say, hey, here was a pivotal moment for me. Here's what I decided to do. And ultimately, here's where it led. I want to get into that aspect of it too. What's all this doing for you?
Yeah, to go back about how to stay relevant and quote unquote cool, it does help to have some teenagers at home. And I hear the music that they're listening and they have the posters up on the wall. So that's a great way to kind of keep it with the pop times on there. For me, about how to be a thick-skinned, it probably also helps that I was a middle child, so no one was watching me. So I was allowed to go do whatever I wanted to do unless I got caught. So I have a natural tendency for that. Being in the art space and being able to perform on stage, that was pretty natural to me. But I got to hide on stage, quote unquote, with 3 other guys. And so taking the leap from going from being in the back, hit the beat down, to being out front and talking, I want to credit like financial services. If you're not out talking and getting in front of clients and doing small groups, that'll definitely help you. The reps help getting in front of everybody to be able to do that. For me doing this, it was I probably did it in reverse order to a lot of people. I know a lot of people start writing a blog or doing some content somewhere. And then eventually, if you get a following, then write a book. I just got an idea to write a book. So I did it. And sitting in a room on the weekends, 5 hours on Saturdays and Sundays, you get to sit alone with your thoughts and kind of go through everything that way. So that was pretty unique process that I did on that. I'd never had a problem really putting it out. You look at comments every once in a while you might get, and despite any kind of negative ones out there, the one person that you can connect with online that says, hey, you changed how I did something, or maybe rethink that through. That's all I needed to hear for maybe every 10 bad comments, if you did get them. Learning to just turn that off and focus on the positive ones that are there. That was really beneficial when you hear that you're impacting people's lives in a different way. So that's how I've been able to work through it and keep putting it out there and keep doing it every week.
Yeah, that's incredible. Well, and again, that's not selective in terms of ignoring any criticism you may get, but really understanding the value of that one comment versus the 5, we'll say 2, right? I mean, the good ones are going to outweigh the bad ones as you do this more and more, but the good ones are the ones that are impactful because they allow you to grow and they let you know, this actually is meaningful. And I think that getting back to one of the things that stands in the way for many advisors is exactly that. We hear about it in the context of niching all the time, right? Like really defining your ideal client profile. A lot of advisors are like, well, I don't want to turn anyone away. But your experience seems to make quite clear that when you make that commitment and when you are able to navigate both the criticism and the reward that you receive, one of the things that's coming out of that experience for you is an even clearer understanding of who is going to want to work with you, who's going to be picking up the phone. It gives you invaluable insight in refining who your ideal client profile is, and it gives you the opportunity to make those adjustments and to ask them questions. I mean, this is one of the other things that I think advisors can do to really help them stand out is ask your clients and your prospects, hey, what stood out to you here? Why did you pick up the phone after 3 months of reading sound returns? What was it in that particular situation? Have you had any of those particular experiences that you could point to that allowed you to realize I'm not doing anything different at this point?
Yeah, I always enjoy when clients come in or prospects and they point to an episode they watched or a chapter of the book. To me, it's all behavioral finance. And what I enjoy about music is it elicits emotions. And so I can hear a song and remember what I was doing the first time I heard that. And most of the time for songs, I have pretty good memories attached to it. So if I can attach a financial lesson to an artist that they're pretty well aware of, I'm finding that as my clients, and to be honest, my niche that I'm in is working with first responders. That has nothing to do with music and money, but I got to think that anybody I want to work with is a fan of music. We may not like the same bands or artists, but almost everybody listens to music. And so it's the tie that binds and that universal language. So as they're coming in, they're bringing up particular ones like, hey, I like the Nirvana episode. I think a lot of people are pulling from the artists that they know, obviously, and that's what brings them in. Or when I did Stevie Wonder back on MLK Day, the clients come in that really appreciate it, put that up, and they learned something. And so that's what I'm trying to do when I'm teaching it, and it's coming into practice. It's some of our first conversations when we're going through client meetings. It's a great icebreaker, and they tell me to keep it up, and it's fun to keep doing.
You just said something there too that's very important, I think, from a marketing perspective, and that has to do with understanding how to frame these educational posts in a way that's relatable, that tells a story, right? That doesn't just sit there flatly and lecture. It invites a conversation, right? That's a real challenge. Again, easier coming from a performance background, understanding the value of dialogue, right? What it means to be in front of an audience. But this can be a fairly steep hurdle as well. I love the fact that that's one of the takeaways here is, again, when you commit, whatever it is you may do that you're interested in, it gives you frameworks to be able to tell those stories that are relatable. So again, you're not just lecturing. It's not just, hey, here's what you do with your 401k. It's, hey, here's an example, a real world example from somebody you probably know, right? Not personally, but from the celebrity pages. I just think that that's a really interesting point And I also want to get back to, you wrote a book. As an editor, of course, I can't congratulate you enough on that, because I know a lot of advisors who want to do that or are planning to do that. It's on their agenda. You mentioned that there was a lot of soul searching involved, right? And it is like drumming, it is a physical activity, whether you're typing or not. You have to commit to it. You did it. You committed to it. What did you take away from that experience of writing a book? And again, what doors has that book opened up for you?
The other badge honors, I use no AI writing it, and I would think it's way easier to write a book with AI nowadays. But if you can do it without that,
you may
all the
think
better.
that.
Yeah. The first conversation I had with my wife, as all the time, hey, I got an idea, right? And sit down, like, I think there's going to be a time commitment of a lot here. And somebody had told me write a little bit every day, and that just wasn't my style. So I would get ideas through the week and meetings and write those down. And then on the weekends, just say, I'm committed to time in the chair here. I kept hearing that. And so I would sit down there for 5 hours and try to pump out a chapter every weekend, and then go through it all. But the adventures, I was always trying to talk to them, not over them. And the industry that we're in is full of acronyms and math. And so I was trying to tap into being a human, talking right to you and talking away. And there was a moment when I was promoting the book or trying to do this. I did some guerrilla style marketing out in Central Park. And I remember, I'll give you $20 if I can interview real quick. And I was asking people questions, like finance questions, but what does an IRA stand for? And there was all kinds of different answers. And then finally somebody got it right. And then my wife asked me, how did it go? And I asked her, like, well, one of the questions I asked was, what is an IRA? And she's like, internal revenue. I'm like, eh. Right. So it's getting beyond acronyms and the math and just connecting. And that was a cool thing doing the book about how to make this easy to understand, and writing it for 18-year-old me, not 30 years later me. And remembering that I had no idea what I was talking about, breaking it down to things that I might understand back when I was a lot younger and about to make a lot of mistakes with money. So that's what I went through on that.
Well, a number of things there. And again, we could go on for hours. But one, I think that really stands out, walking an idea back in the way you just explained, so that you're able, because so much of the time that we spend on the marketing side and on the advisory side has everything to do with talking to other advisors and other marketers, right? That's so much of the dynamic. And it can be challenging to remember that not everyone knows the lingo, right? Like things that you don't even think twice about. It might be completely new to somebody, and somebody who's savvy, somebody who has investable assets, somebody who's been working hard toward retirement, they might not necessarily know some of the jargon and lingo that we bandy about without even realizing it. And so stepping back and thinking about what does this look like, even if you've defined your ideal client and they are savvy about money, they're financially literate, what are some of the ways that you can help make them understand even more clearly the concept? Give them, you had mentioned behavioral finance earlier, give them the reinforcement they need to actually put the plan in action and stick to it, right? I mean, this is the big eye roll moment for so many advisors. We put together a great plan, clients nod their head, they do it for a while, and then suddenly it's like everything starts over again. This is a wonderful way to help reinforce, which is really at the heart of behavioral finance, the healthy behaviors, the positive behaviors, the successful behaviors that allow people to stick to a plan like that. So I think that's another really important takeaway, is walk it back so that somebody who, even if they're financially savvy, understands what it is you're trying to say without all of the jargon involved, right?
100%, 100%.
Yeah. And Drew, that gets back to being your authentic self. I mean, I know that's become a sort of slippery concept, but I think you've defined it really well by giving us some concrete examples of what it looks like and what it takes. And as I said before, that sense of knowing yourself well enough and knowing your interests gives you the opportunity to streamline your process. You don't have to do as much heavy lifting. It's more in terms of refining the idea, organizing the idea, blending it together with your interests so that the financial lesson or the financial story comes through in a relatable way. So, well, listen, like I said, we could go on and on and on, but I know we've got a QR code here that I want to get up on the screen. This will allow viewers to connect with you. And just give us a little bit of a rundown of what they can expect if they do that, whether it's other advisors who are interested in getting some pointers from you, or whether it's prospective clients.
Yeah, I would love to hear from anybody that wants to reach out. I can share my story and how to relate with you. And my biggest message is being yourself. Yeah. It's a lot more natural when you just are yourself. And I know it's easy to say. You're going to find people that are in your niche and outside of it that have the same interests and same hobbies as you. It could be the most oddest thing. You will find people that are into that. So keep being yourself, keep reaching out and doing it, keeping a good tempo too, and doing it weekly. Like you said with financial plans, couple things back there, Derek. I can go and reinforce a plan with a client, and they walk out of here, and we touch base every 3 months or every 6 months. If they're seeing me and they're seeing me doing my thing about what I'm talking about, it's a constant reminder of like, hey, are you doing your plan? I should stop at the end of it there and say that. But keep the tempo up, keep in front of everybody, and it all helps out and feeds upon each other.
Yeah, and have fun, right? I mean, that's one of the big takeaways for me in all of this. You can hear it in your voice. Every one of the stories you've shared, there's an enthusiasm there. And I know it can be tough. Trust me, do I ever know it can be tough when you're putting in the hours and you have the good days and the bad, but there's an enjoyment to that enthusiasm. And when you align yourself not only with your own values, but your own interests, that just gets that much easier to do, right? It gets easier to sustain the fun and the interest, and goodness gracious, but are you ever going to notice, like you said earlier, Drew, when people reach out to you, they're reaching out because they've seen you for a while. They've been subscribed to Sound Returns. They've read the book. They're like, oh, that's the guy. Like, that's an interesting story. I want to hear more about that. When you're inviting a conversation like that, then your marketing can't help but win, right? And that's a great lesson for all of us to take away. And that's really what we're talking about when we're talking about authenticity, right? It's about being you, and doing that unabashedly in ways that are still compliant. That's part of this that I totally want to go into more. And maybe we'll do that on another episode on another day, because there are a lot of compliance risks that you've had to overcome here. I suspect it helps to have a collaborative relationship with compliance to make that happen.
And what I've learned is always end any statement with a question mark, and you're mostly going to be okay.
There we go. That's the one to draw a line under, everyone.
Right
there.
Yeah. Question mark at the end.
We're good. Love it.
Yeah. I didn't promise anything.
Well, Drew, I can't thank you enough. Again, I want to bring up our close screen here. But it's been an absolute pleasure. I feel like you've given a lot of very keen insights that advisors are going to be able to apply to their own marketing, starting with showing up as who you are and letting your interests really drive the marketing that you're doing, so your enthusiasm comes through clearly. We're going to continue the conversation, Drew. I'm looking forward to that. For those of you who are tuning in this week, again, Callie is out on maternity leave. Drop her a note. Let her know you're thinking of her. Whether you're joining us live or are watching the recording. We will be back with Ask Us Marketing next week. So please tune in at 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Central. Thank you,